Jake never thought sharing a room with an alien would be normal life for him, but here he was, living on Orbital Station 9. A giant floating city where dozens of alien races lived side by side. He had come here for work, fixing small ships and cargo drones, just another human trying to make a living in the galaxy. His roommate, Zor'eth, was not human at all. Tall, thin, with 4 long arms and skin that looked like polished black stone. Zor'eth belonged to a species called the Critchiel. They were quiet, private, and very polite. Zor'eth almost never spoke unless it was necessary. Jake didn't mind. In fact, he liked the peaceful roommate situation. But over the past week, Jake noticed something strange. Late at night, when the station was quiet, he would hear sounds coming from Zor'eth's side of the room. Not normal sounds like snoring or breathing. It was a series of sharp clicks and crackles, like someone talking while electricity was sparking in the background. It didn't sound like any language Jake had heard before. Sometimes, it almost felt like the sound was crawling inside his head. He thought about asking, but he didn't. Want to seem rude? Aliens had their own customs, and Jake had learned it was better not to poke into other people's business. That changed one ordinary morning. Jake had just finished taking a shower. Steam still clung to his skin, and he was humming to himself as he wrapped a towel around his waist. He stepped into the hallway that connected the bathroom to his room. And there stood Zor'eth, frozen, staring straight at him. At first, Jake thought the alien was just surprised, but then he saw Zor'eth's body stiffen, every muscle tight, and his forearms pull slightly back like he was ready to run or fight. Zor'eth's large black eyes widened, and for the first time since Jake had known him, the alien looked afraid, truly afraid. Jake blinked, confused. Morning," he said, trying to break the tension, but Zor'eth didn't answer. Instead, the alien made a low clicking noise deep in his throat and muttered something in his own language. The words were fast and sharp, like they were meant for someone else. Someone not even there. Jake stood awkwardly in the hallway, water dripping from his hair. "Okay. I'll just go put some clothes on," he said. Still, Zor'eth didn't move. Finally, without another word, the alien turned and walked quickly into his own room, the door sliding shut with a hiss. Jake laughed to himself as he got dressed. So he'd been caught in a towel. Big deal. But the more he thought about it, the more it bothered him. Zor'eth wasn't embarrassed. He was scared. Why would seeing a human in a towel cause fear? It didn't make sense. Later that day, Jake noticed something else. When he tried to talk to Zor'eth, the alien kept his distance. No eye contact, short answers, and he never turned his back to Jake. As if he expected Jake to do something dangerous at any second. That night, Jake was about to go to bed when he heard it again. The strange clicking and crackling sound. Only this time, it was louder. He crept closer to Zor'eth's room, pressing his ear against the metal door. The alien was speaking quickly, the strange sounds mixing with what sounded like static from a radio. Then Jake heard his own name, clear as day. His heart skipped a beat. He stepped back, unsure if he should knock or pretend he hadn't heard anything before he could decide. The door slid open. Zor'eth stood there, his black eyes locking. On Jake's face, "You should not be awake," Zor'eth said, his voice lower than usual. Jake forced a smile. "Yeah, well, I couldn't sleep." Zor'eth's gaze flicked over him, scanning like he was searching for something. Then, without another word, the alien shut the door again the next morning. Jake found something unusual. His protein packs were missing from the fridge. Not the alien food, not the vegetables, just the high-protein human rations. When he asked Zor'eth, the alien claimed he didn't know anything about it, but Jake saw the way his eyes shifted, the small twitch in his upper arm. He was lying. Things only got stranger. Jake caught Zor'eth standing outside his door at night, holding a small scanning device. When Jake asked what he was doing, Zor'eth simply said, checking for damage, and walked away. Later, the station's AI sent Jake a private message. The message had no sender name, no explanation, just 2 words glowing on the screen. You have been noticed. Jake stared at the words, unsure what they meant. When he asked Zor'eth about it, the alien froze. Delete that message, Zor'eth said immediately, and listen to me. You should leave this place before the others. No. Jake's stomach tightened. Others? Others who? He asked Zor'eth, as eyes flickered with something between fear and anger. The ones who understand what you are, he said, and... Then he left the room without another word. Jake sat alone in silence. He didn't know it yet. But the moment Zor'eth had seen him in that hallway, a chain of events had started. Events that would change his life forever. Jake never thought. Sharing a room with an alien would be normal life for him. But here he was, living on Orbital Station 9, a giant floating city where dozens of alien races live side by side. He had come here for work. Fixing small ships and cargo drones, just another human trying to make a living in the galaxy. His roommate Zor'eth was not human at all. Tall, thin, with 4 long arms and skin that looked like polished black stone. Zor'eth belonged to a species called the Crishal. They were quiet, private, and very polite. Zor'eth almost never spoke unless it was necessary. Jake didn't mind. In fact, he liked the peaceful roommate situation. But over the past week, Jake noticed something strange. Late at night, when the station was quiet, he would hear sounds coming from Zor'eth's side of the room. Not normal sounds like snoring or breathing. It was a series of sharp clicks and crackles, like someone talking while electricity was sparking in the background. It didn't sound like any language Jake had heard before. Sometimes, it almost felt like the sound was crawling inside his head. He thought about asking, but he didn't want to seem rude. Aliens had their own customs, and Jake had learned it was better not to poke into other people's business. That changed one ordinary morning. Jake had just finished taking a shower. Steam still clung to his skin, and he was humming to himself as he wrapped a towel around his waist. He stepped into the hallway that connected the bathroom to his room. And there stood Zor'eth, frozen, staring straight at him. At first, Jake thought the alien was just surprised, but then he saw Zor'eth's body stiffen, every muscle tight, and his forearms pull slightly back like he was ready to run or fight. Zor'eth's large black eyes widened. And for the first time since Jake had known him, the alien looked afraid. Truly afraid. Jake blinked, confused. Morning," he said, trying to break the tension, but Zor'eth didn't answer. Instead, the alien made a low clicking noise deep in his throat and muttered something in his own language. The words were fast and sharp, like they were meant for someone else. Someone not even there. Jake stood awkwardly in the hallway, water dripping from his hair. "Okay. I'll just go put some clothes on," he said. Still, Zor'eth didn't move. Finally, without another word, the alien turned and walked quickly into his own room, the door sliding shut with a hiss. Jake laughed to himself as he got dressed. So he'd been caught in a towel. Big deal. But the more he thought about it, the more it bothered him. Zor'eth wasn't embarrassed. He was scared. Why would seeing a human in a towel cause fear? It didn't make sense. Later that day, Jake noticed something else. When he tried to talk to Zor'eth, the alien kept his distance. No eye contact, short answers, and he never turned his back to Jake. As if he expected Jake to do something dangerous at any second. That night, Jake was about to go to bed when he heard it again. The strange clicking and crackling sound. Only this time, it was louder. He crept closer to Zor'eth's room, pressing his ear against the metal door. The alien was speaking quickly, the strange sounds mixing with what sounded like static from a radio. Then Jake heard his own name, clear as day. His heart skipped a beat. He stepped back, unsure if he should knock or pretend he hadn't heard anything before he could decide. The door slid open. Zor'eth stood there, his black eyes locking. On Jake's face, "You should not be awake," Zor'eth said, his voice lower than usual. Jake forced a smile. "Yeah, well, I couldn't sleep." Zor'eth's gaze flicked over him, scanning like he was searching for something. Then, without another word, the alien shut the door again the next morning. Jake found something unusual. His protein packs were missing from the fridge. Not the alien food, not the vegetables, just the high-protein human rations. When he asked Zor'eth, the alien claimed he didn't know anything about it, but Jake saw the way his eyes shifted, the small twitch in his upper arm. He was lying. Things only got stranger. Jake caught Zor'eth standing outside his door at night, holding a small scanning device. When Jake asked what he was doing, Zor'eth simply said, "Checking for damage," and walked away. Later, the station's AI sent Jake a private message. The message had no sender name, no explanation, just 2 words glowing on the screen. "You have been noticed." Jake stared at the words, unsure what they meant. When he asked Zor'eth about it, the alien froze. "Delete that message," Zor'eth said immediately, "and listen to me. You should leave this place before the others know." Jake's stomach tightened. Others? Others who? He asked. Zor'eth's eyes flickered with something between fear and anger. "The ones who understand what you are," he said, and then he left. From that day, Jake felt like the station had changed. It wasn't the walls or the people, but the air itself. Every time he stepped out of his room, he felt eyes on him. Not just Zor'eth's eyes, but other eyes too. Strangers in the corridors, who stared a little too long. Even the friendly shopkeepers on level 4 suddenly seemed quieter when he walked by. Zor'eth's behavior became even stranger. The alien stopped eating meals in the shared kitchen. He would carry sealed containers into his room and never come out until the smell of heated crucial food was gone. Whenever Jake tried to talk to him, Zor'eth would answer in short sentences, always glancing toward the door as if checking if someone was listening. One morning, Jake woke up to find faint scratches on his door, not like a tool or a knife, but deep grooves, as if something with claws had tried to open it. He ran his fingers along the marks, and a strange chill went down his spine. They weren't random. They looked like symbols, 3 long slashes and 1 short. When he asked Zor'eth, the alien froze for a moment before shaking his head. "Just damage from maintenance bots," Zor'eth said quickly, but Jake didn't believe it. Later that day, Jake went to the station market for supplies. While passing a small stall run by a species called the Threll, he overheard 2 of them whispering. In their rapid, clicking language, he didn't understand most of it. But one word stood out, human, when they noticed Jake looking. Their eyes went wide and they quickly turned away. It wasn't normal curiosity, it was fear. The same fear he had seen in Zor'eth's eyes that morning in the hallway. That night, things got worse. Jake woke to the sound of footsteps outside. His room, slow, careful, deliberate, he stayed still, pretending to sleep. The footsteps stopped right outside his door. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then came a faint buzzing sound, like a device scanning through the wall. Jake's heart pounded. Suddenly, the buzzing stopped, and the footsteps moved away, fading into the corridor. The next morning, Jake decided he needed answers. When Zor'eth came back from wherever he went, every day, Jake blocked the doorway. "We need to talk," Jake said firmly. Zor'eth hesitated, his forehands curling slightly in tension. "There is nothing to talk about," he said. "Yes, there is," Jake insisted. "You've been acting like I'm dangerous. The neighbors are staring at me, and someone was outside my door last night." Zor'eth's mandibles twitched, a crucial sign of stress. Finally, he sighed. I warned you, human. But you did not listen, Zor'eth said. The moment I saw you. Like that. It confirmed something I hoped was not true. Jake frowned. Like what? Naked? You're saying my bare skin is some kind of problem? Zor'eth looked him straight in the eye. In my culture, seeing a human without coverings is a sign. Zor'eth said slowly, it means the old stories are real and that a human weapon has awakened. Jake blinked. Weapon? I'm a mechanic, not a weapon. Zor'eth stepped closer, lowering his voice. You are more dangerous than you. No, he said. Most species in this galaxy believe humans are harmless, clever, but weak. That is a lie. Jake's stomach tightened. This is ridiculous, he muttered. But a part of him remembered the strange strength he had felt during a fight back on Earth years ago. A moment where time seemed to slow down and his body had moved on its own faster than his brain. Zor'eth wasn't finished. My people have records, he said, from a war so old no one remembers it clearly. Except us. The humans in those records were predators, the kind that could change the course of a battle without weapons. The enemy called them skinwalkers because their bodies could adapt instantly to survive any threat. Jake tried to laugh, but it sounded hollow. You think I'm one of those? Zor'eth tilted his head. I do not think, he said. I know. And so do others on this station. The words sank in like ice. If Zor'eth was telling the truth, then the strange looks, the whispers, the message from the station AI, it all made sense. Someone had recognized him, and if the wrong people knew what he was, then maybe the danger Zor'eth kept hinting at was already here. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. Every sound in the hallway felt like it was coming for him. When he closed his eyes, he imagined claws scratching at his door, black eyes watching from the dark. He kept replaying Zor'eth's words in his head. The human weapon has awakened. He didn't feel like a weapon. He felt like prey. But deep down, there was something else. A quiet, dangerous spark. A part of him that almost wanted to see what would happen if someone pushed too far. Jake didn't know it yet, but the push was coming, and it would come sooner than he thought. Jake didn't see Zor'eth the next morning. The alien's room was locked. The lights inside completely off. That wasn't normal. Zor'eth always kept a soft green glow on, a crucial habit to show they were at home. Jake knocked twice. No answer. He was about to knock again when the station lights flickered. It was brief, but in that split second, he thought he saw a shadow move behind Zor'eth's door. Jake decided to head to work and clear his head. But even the cargo docks felt different. Colleagues avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped. When he walked past, he overheard two engineers whispering. One said, "That's him," and the other replied, "Are you sure? If it's true, we're all in danger." Jake pretended not to hear, but his stomach tightened. When he returned home later, Zor'eth was sitting in the kitchen. The alien's 4 hands were folded, but his posture was tense. "Sit," Zor'eth said, his voice low. Jake sat down slowly for a moment. Neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the station's air filters. Finally, Zor'eth leaned forward. "You must leave this station," he said. Jake frowned. "Why?" "Because of some ancient fairy tale you believe in." "This is no tale," Zor'eth replied. "You think you are just a mechanic, but your body says otherwise." Jake shook his head. "I don't even know what that means." Zor'eth tapped the table with one claw. "My people have seen what humans can do," he said. "Long before your species lost its memory of the war, humans were unstoppable. They could heal faster, run longer, and adapt to poison. Cold, heat, even radiation. You were not soldiers. You were living weapons, and your kind was feared above all others." Jake let out a short laugh. "That's crazy." He said, "If humans were that powerful, why don't we know about it?" Because someone erased it, Zor'eth said simply. The victors of the old war hid the truth so humans would never rise again. They scattered your kind across worlds, making you believe you were weak. But some of us remember. And some of us watch. Jake leaned back. So you're saying the reason you freaked out when you saw me in a towel is because you recognized me? Zor'eth's eyes narrowed. Not you, he said. Your body. The way your skin reacts to light, the way your muscles move without command, it is the same as in the old recordings. To most aliens, it means nothing. But to certain species, it is a signal, a warning that a predator has awakened. Jake rubbed his face. Okay? Let's say I believe you, he said. Why now? Why would seeing me like that suddenly make this happen? Zor'eth hesitated. The human body carries patterns, shapes, and reflexes encoded in the mind and flesh. The moment another species sees the full, uncovered form, something in their memory recognizes it. It triggers the old fear. Jake sat there, silent. Zor'eth's voice dropped even lower, and once that happens, word spreads fast. He said, the wrong ears have heard it already. I have intercepted messages. Others on this station are coming for you, not because they hate you, but because they fear what you could become. A cold shiver ran through Jake's spine. He remembered the scratches on his door, the footsteps at night. The AI's message, you have been noticed. It all connected now. Someone had already marked him. So what do I do? Jake asked. Leave, Zor'eth said without hesitation. Tonight, I can get you on a cargo vessel heading for a neutral zone. You will be safe there. For a while, Jake narrowed his eyes. And you? You're just going to stay here. Zor'eth's mandibles clicked softly. My fate was sealed the moment I saw you. If I am found helping you, I will be hunted too. But I have lived long enough. If I can get you to safety, it will be worth it. Before Jake could answer, a loud metallic thud shook the door to their apartment. Both of them froze. Another thud followed, then a slow, dragging scrape. Zor'eth stood instantly. Two hands reaching for a hidden weapon under the counter. A slender, curved blade with a faint blue glow. They are early, he whispered. Jake's heart pounded. He could hear voices in the hallway now, speaking in a language that sounded like gravel rolling in a metal drum. Zor'eth moved to the door, signaling Jake to stay back. Then the station lights flickered again, and for a moment, the air felt heavier. Like the whole corridor outside was holding its breath. The voices grew louder, closer. Jake felt a strange rush of adrenaline, his skin prickling. He didn't know why. But his hearing sharpened. He could make out the scrape of claws on metal. The faint click of weapons being armed, Zor'eth noticed, and gave him a sharp look. It's starting, the alien said. Do not fight it, just move when I tell. You. Jake swallowed hard. The door's lock hissed. Something forcing it open from the outside, Zor'eth tightened his grip on the blade. Jake could feel his own muscles tensing, ready for something he didn't understand. And in that moment, deep down, a small part of him wasn't afraid at all. It was ready. The door hissed, metal bending under pressure. A long crack appeared in the frame, glowing faintly as if something was cutting through it from the other side. Zor'eth took one step back, blade raised. Jake could feel the air change heavier. Sharper, like the station itself was holding its breath. The door burst open. 3 figures rushed in. Their bodies covered in black armor that seemed to drink the light. Their heads were hidden behind insect-like helmets, each with a single red visor glowing in the dark. They moved fast, too fast for normal mercenaries. Jake's mind screamed at him to hide, but his body didn't listen. One of the attackers lunged at Zor'eth, swinging a blade that shimmered like liquid metal. Zor'eth blocked with both lower arms while his upper arms struck back, his curved blade slicing a deep line into the attacker's armor. Sparks flew, the air filling with the smell of burning metal. Another attacker moved for Jake. He barely had time to react before the armored figure was on him, swinging a weapon shaped like a hooked spear. Jake stepped aside, faster than he thought possible. The spear cut through the air where his head had been a moment ago. Without thinking, Jake grabbed the attacker's arm, twisted, and heard a sharp crack. The mercenary fell to one knee, and Jake's hand moved on its own, striking the side of the helmet with enough force to send the figure sprawling across the floor. Jake froze, staring at his own hands. He hadn't even been breathing hard. He had moved like the fight had been planned in advance. No hesitation, no fear, just precision. Move. Zor'eth shouted, pulling him back just as the third attacker fired a burst of glowing projectiles. The energy bolts tore into the wall where Jake had been standing, leaving smoking holes. Zor'eth spun, his blade flashing, and the second attacker collapsed with a deep gash across his chest plate. The last one retreated toward the door, firing wildly to cover his escape. One bolt grazed Zor'eth's arm, leaving a smoking burn, but the alien didn't flinch. Jake didn't think he ran after the retreating mercenary. Moving faster than his own footsteps, he caught up in 2 strides, grabbed the back of the armored neck, and slammed the figure into the wall with a sound like breaking glass. The helmet cracked, revealing a pale reptilian face underneath, eyes wide with terror. The mercenary hissed something in its own language, but Jake didn't understand. Still, the fear in those eyes was clear. Zor'eth pulled Jake back. "They will send more," he said, breathing heavily. This was only a test. Jake's head spun. A test. "They were trying to kill us." "No," Zor'eth said. "They were trying to see." If the stories are true, Jake looked down at his hands again. They didn't even shake. His breathing was steady. It felt wrong after a fight like that. He should have been trembling, exhausted. Instead, he felt ready for more. The sound of alarms began to echo through the station. Zor'eth moved quickly, grabbing a small pack from his room. "We have minutes, maybe less," he said. "They will block the exits soon." Jake followed him out into the corridor. The flickering lights made the shadows stretch and twist along the walls. Every step felt like walking deeper into a trap. They turned down a narrow maintenance tunnel, the kind only workers used. Pipes hissed overhead, the air hot and damp. Behind them, Jake could hear movement, more attackers, boots striking metal. Zor'eth led him through a series of turns until they reached a hatch. He punched a code into the panel, and the hatch slid open with a hiss of cold air. Beyond it was a dark shaft leading down, the sound of machinery echoing from below. "In here," Zor'eth said, climbing down quickly. Jake followed, gripping the cold metal rungs halfway down. A noise above made him glance up. A shadow moved across the hatch, then disappeared. The hatch closed with a sharp clang, and Jake heard the sound of something heavy striking it from above. They had found them by the time Jake reached the bottom. Zor'eth was already opening another door. It led to a wide, dimly lit chamber full of cargo crates and loading arms. "This is Dock C7, Zor'eth said. "If we can reach the outer bay, I can get us onto a freighter leaving in 10 minutes, before Jake could reply. A loud crash echoed from the other side of the chamber. 3 more attackers stepped out from between the crates, their weapons already drawn. Jake's pulse quickened, but not with fear. Something inside him wanted this fight. The first mercenary rushed forward, but Jake sidestepped and swept their legs out from under them in one smooth motion. The second came from the side, swinging a heavy club. Jake ducked, grabbed the attacker's arm, and threw them into a cargo crate so hard the metal dented. Zor'eth took the third, his blade flashing in the dim light. When the fight was over, all 3 were down, breathing but unmoving. Jake stood there, chest rising and falling, but still calm. Zor'eth's eyes met his. "You see now," the alien said. Quietly, This is who you are." Jake didn't answer, because deep inside he already knew Zor'eth was right. The cargo bay was silent except for the hum of the station's engines. Jake stood over the fallen mercenaries, his heart steady, his breathing calm. It felt wrong, not because of fear, but because of how natural the fight had been. His hands didn't shake. His muscles didn't ache. It was as if his body had been waiting for this moment all along. Zor'eth wiped his blade on a strip of cloth and turned to Jake. "We can't stay here," he said. "Help me drag them into the shadows." They moved quickly, hiding the bodies behind a stack of cargo crates. Then Zor'eth motioned for Jake to follow. They slipped out of Dock C7 and into another maintenance tunnel. The narrow space was dim and smelled of metal and oil. Only when they were deep inside did Zor'eth stop. He turned, his black eyes fixed on Jake. "You want answers?" Zor'eth said. "I will give them to you, but you must listen, and you must not interrupt." Jake nodded slowly. Zor'eth leaned against the wall, his voice low but sharp. "Humans are not what they believe they are," he began. "Your species thinks you are explorers, traders, workers, inventors. But long ago, you were something else. You were the galaxy's most feared predators." Jake frowned, but didn't speak. Zor'eth continued. "Thousands of years ago, there was a war not between nations, but between species. The galaxy was divided, and the most powerful factions built armies, weapons, fleets. But none of them could match the humans." He paused, his mandibles clicking softly. "You were not the biggest or the fastest. But you were adaptable beyond reason. If the air was toxic, your lungs changed. If the ground burned, your skin thickened. If your enemy used a weapon, you learned it faster than they could reload." Jake tried to process the words. It sounded like something out of a fantasy story. But a part of him remembered his fights earlier. The speed, the precision, and it didn't feel impossible anymore. Zor'eth's gaze hardened. "The old records call your kind skinwalkers. Because you could survive anything, you did not fight like other species. You hunted, you stalked your enemies, you studied them, you broke them, and when the war ended, everyone agreed humans were too dangerous to be allowed to exist freely." Jake's jaw tightened. "So what happened to us?" he asked, unable to stay silent. Zor'eth tilted his head. "You were broken. Not in body, but in memory. The victors of the war scattered you across worlds. Erased your history, made you believe you were weak. And for thousands of years, it worked." Jake felt a strange heat rising in his chest. "Then how do you know all this?" Zor'eth's eyes narrowed. "My people were not your enemies." "Not exactly. We fought you, yes, but we also respected you. We kept records, hidden so the other species would not destroy them. We knew that one day, a human would awaken again." Jake stepped back. "Awaken? You mean this? The fighting? The speed?" Zor'eth nodded slowly. "It is in your DNA. Locked until the right moment, sometimes it is triggered by danger, sometimes by exposure, and sometimes by being seen." Jake froze. "Being seen?" "Yes," Zor'eth said. "The human body is a warning sign to certain species, a signal from the old war, one look. And they remember what you are. That is why the mercenaries came. They wanted to see for themselves if the skinwalker was real." Jake rubbed his face, trying to take it all in. "So now what?" I just run forever." Zor'eth shook his head. "No, if you run, they will keep coming. The galaxy is vast, but their fear is bigger. They will hunt you until you are dead, or until you make them fear you again." The words hung in the air. Jake looked at his hands, flexing his fingers. He didn't feel like a hero, but he didn't feel like prey either. Something deep inside was stirring, something old, something dangerous. Zor'eth leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There is more," he said. "The war. It never truly ended. The same forces that erased your past are still here, still watching. And if you live long enough, you will see them. And when you do, we'll have to decide, are you their prey or their predator? Jake's eyes met Zor'eth's for a long moment. Neither of them spoke. Then the station lights flickered again. Followed by the distant wail of an alarm, Zor'eth straightened. They know where we are. We must move. Jake took a deep breath. Then let's stop running, he said. Surprising even himself, Zor'eth's mandibles twitched the closest thing a Crishel had to a smile. Good, he said. Then your awakening has truly begun. The alarm blared through the station. Red lights flashed along the walls. Bathing the corridors in a warning glow, Zor'eth moved first. Gripping his blade in one hand and pulling Jake toward a side hatch with the other, they will come from every direction, Zor'eth said. We cannot fight them all. Jake followed, his steps quick but controlled. The air was thick with the smell of hot metal and ozone. Every corner they turned seemed longer than the last. He could hear the sound of boots striking the floor somewhere behind them. Many boots, the hunters were closing in. They cut through a cargo tunnel, the floor shaking slightly as the station's massive machines worked above. Zor'eth's movements were sharp and sure, never hesitating. Jake noticed something strange. His own breathing stayed calm. His muscles didn't tire, even with the pounding of feet behind them. He felt like he could run for hours. A shadow moved ahead. Zor'eth raised his blade, but it was only a small service drone hovering in the tunnel, its scanning lights flickering. Jake almost ignored it. But then the drone's voice came through in a mechanical whisper. This way, human, it said. Before darting down a side passage, Zor'eth frowned. That is not station protocol, but the sound of their pursuers was getting closer. Jake made the choice. Follow it, he said, and sprinted after the drone. The small machine zipped through a maintenance duct just big enough for a person to crawl through. Jake slid inside, the metal cold against his hands. Zor'eth followed, sealing the hatch behind them. The sound of heavy boots echoed just outside. For a moment, Jake thought they had escaped. Then came the thud. Something hit the hatch from the outside. Hard, the metal dented inward. Zor'eth hissed in frustration. They have breach charges, he said. We must move faster. They crawled through the duct, the drone's light guiding the way. It took them to a vertical shaft where the air roared past like a storm. A maintenance lift waited, but the moment Jake stepped on it, the sound of grinding metal above made his skin prickle. He looked up. Dark shapes were sliding down the walls of the shaft, their glowing visors cutting through the shadows. They're here, Jake shouted. Zor'eth slammed the lift controls, and the platform dropped like a stone. The hunters above opened fire, glowing bolts slicing through the air. One bolt passed so close to Jake's head he could feel the heat on his skin. Without thinking, he moved in front of Zor'eth. Catching a second bolt on a loose cargo plate, he ripped from the wall. The metal smoked in his hands, but he didn't feel the burn. The lift hit the bottom with a jolt. They ran again, following the drone into a storage bay. Massive containers towered above them like metal cliffs, casting long shadows under the flashing red lights. Jake heard footsteps approaching from two directions. They're surrounding us, he said. Zor'eth didn't argue. He simply turned toward a stack of crates and began climbing, his long limbs moving quickly. Jake followed, and to his surprise, the climb felt easy. No strain, no hesitation, just movement. As if his body knew the way. From the top of the crates, Jake could see them. Dozens of armored figures moving through the bay below. Some carried blades, others rifles. But all of them moved with the same purpose, to close in. The drone zipped ahead, toward a ventilation hatch high on the far wall. That's our exit, Jake said. Zor'eth nodded, but between them and the hatch was a wide-open space with no cover. Jake scanned the bay. There was a cargo crane suspended from the ceiling. Without stopping to think, he grabbed the crane's control cable and swung down. The line groaning under his weight, he landed between two hunters, knocking them both aside before they could react. Zor'eth dropped down after him, blade flashing in quick arcs. The nearest hunters fell back, buying them precious seconds. They ran for the hatch. More bolts flew past, one grazing Jake's shoulder instead of slowing him. The pain sent a surge of energy through his body. He moved faster, pulling himself up the hatch ladder in 3 quick jumps. Zor'eth followed, sealing the hatch behind them. Inside the ventilation shaft, the noise of the chase faded to a dull echo. The drone hovered ahead, its light softer now. Jake glanced back at Zor'eth. They won't stop, will they? No, Zor'eth said. You are awake now, and the galaxy can smell blood in the water. The shaft opened into a smaller docking platform. Single ship waited there, an old cargo hauler with patched hull plates and flickering lights. The drone flew toward it, beeping twice before vanishing inside. Jake and Zor'eth ran up the ramp. The ship's engines were already warm. Rumbling with power, as Jake stepped into the cockpit, he glanced out the viewport, far across the station. He could see more ships arriving, dark, sleek, and armed. They weren't here to arrest him. They were here to make sure he didn't leave alive. The cargo hauler's engines rumbled beneath Jake's feet. The cockpit smelled of old metal, oil, and recycled air. Zor'eth sat in the co-pilot's seat, his 4 hands working across the control panels with practiced speed through the viewport. Jake could see the docking bay doors beginning to open, revealing the cold black of space beyond, but they weren't alone. Dozens of small hunter craft hovered outside, their sharp silhouettes framed against the stars. More ships were sliding into position, forming a blockade. They're waiting for us, Jake said, his voice calm but heavy. Yes, Zor'eth replied, without looking up. They believe you will run, and they are ready to chase you to the ends of the galaxy. Jake stared at the controls. Every instinct told him to push forward, to blast through the gap and vanish into the deep void. But another feeling rose in him, stronger than fear. It was the same heat he had felt during the fights, the same strange clarity. His body didn't want to run. It wanted to hunt. Zor'eth seemed to sense his thoughts. There is another way, the alien said. His voice quieter now, but it will change everything. Jake glanced at him. What do you mean? Zor'eth's black eyes locked onto his. If you choose to fight, you will no longer be hidden. Every faction, every hunter, every shadow in the galaxy will know the Skinwalker has returned. They will fear you, and they will try to destroy you. Jake leaned back, his mind racing for his whole life. He had been ordinary, just a mechanic from a small blue world. Now he was something else, something the galaxy feared. The thought should have terrified him, but it didn't. Zor'eth placed one hand on the throttle. We can still escape, he said. There are safe worlds, hidden places. You can live quietly, maybe for years, but once you take the other path, there is no going back. Jake turned his gaze to the hunter ships outside. They hovered like vultures, waiting for their prey to make a move. He imagined what would happen if he ran the chases, the ambushes, the constant fear. It would never end. Unless he ended it. Open the comes, Jake said. Zor'eth froze for a moment. You want to speak to them? Jake's voice was steady. Yes. Zor'eth tapped the console, and the cum channel crackled to life. Static filled the cockpit for a second before a cold mechanical voice came through. Unidentified human vessel. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Jake leaned toward the mic. No, he said simply. There was a pause on the other end. Repeat your response, the voice demanded. Jake's lips curled into something between a smile and a snarl. I said, no. The cum cut out, replaced by the sharp beeping of weapon locks. Zor'eth's mandibles clicked. They will fire in seconds. Then let's give them something to remember. Jake said. Zor'eth hesitated only a moment before flipping. A hidden switch on the console, panels along the cargo hauler's hull slid open, revealing weapons far more advanced than any civilian ship should have. Jake raised an eyebrow. "You've been holding out on me," Zor'eth's eyes gleamed. "I told you." "I knew this day would come." The hunter ships moved in, their engines flaring. Jake gripped the controls, and the cargo hauler roared forward. With sudden speed, energy bolts flashed past the viewport, but Jake's reflexes took over, weaving the ship through the gaps with impossible precision. Zor'eth's hands danced across the targeting systems, and the first volley from their cannons lit up the void. One hunter ship exploded in a bright orange bloom, scattering debris. Into the darkness, the coms lit up again. Voices shouting orders. Jake ignored them, twisting the hauler into a tight roll and diving straight toward the blockade. Two more hunters tried to cut them off, but Jake slid between them, the ships, guns tearing one apart while the other spun out of control. As they broke through the blockade, Jake's breathing was calm. It felt like flying had always been part of him. Every movement was perfect, every turn exactly where it needed to be. Zor'eth looked at him with something that almost resembled pride. "You have made your choice," he said. "The galaxy will know your name." Jake glanced at the stars ahead. "They can know it," he said. "They can fear it, too." Behind them, the hunter ships regrouped, engines flaring as they began to give chase. But this time, Jake didn't feel like prey. This time, he was leading them into his territory. The hauler vanished into the deep black, engines burning bright. Far away, the stars stretched out before them like an endless hunting ground, and somewhere in the shadows of the galaxy, a message was already spreading. The Skinwalker has returned.